Hi, in this video we are going to talk about DeepSkyStacker. DeepSkyStacker, also known as DSS, is one of the most commonly used software for calibrate and stack your light frame for deep sky astrophotography. So before going to watch in detail the program, I want to mention that it's always worth to organize your data in some reasonable way. One way I found is to collect all my data into directories that are called with the date of the imaging section, the location, the target, and the kind of equipment I used. Inside, I organize my data per light frame, which are the images for the target, and then for calibrating frames, namely the flat, darks, dark flat, and I have bias in a library because bias are basically calibration frames that are the only one that can be transferred between astrophotography sessions. So because they are not temperature dependent as the darks, and they are not depending on the optical train you use as the flats. So once you have organized your data, it's always worth to review your images before you start stacking. So this you can use Adobe Bridge if you have a subscription to Adobe product. You can use Preview for Mac. You can use Irfan View for Windows. So the idea is that you go through all the images and basically you remove all that are obviously wrong. You may have a plane passing in front of your target, or you may have guiding problems or tracking problems with elongated stars. So all these images will be removed, and you will be left with a good one. Now, with this kind of organization, it is easy to work with DSS. Now, DSS is a free software and is for Windows only, unfortunately. There are ways you can use it on Macintosh. There are no real counterparts that are native to Mac. What you can do is either install Windows on your Mac using a bootcamp, or you can create a virtual machine with VirtualBox or VMware or Parallels. All these solutions require to use a Windows license. You could, if you don't have the last operative system of Mac, so if you are not on Catalina, you still have support for 32-bit application, and you could use Wine in order to to compile DSS for Mac. I am running on Catalina on my Mac, so I have to switch to a Windows virtual machine, which I found to be the most flexible way, because it will run alongside with your Mac. You can move it on an external hard drive when you don't need, so to free space on your Mac, and you will have access to all the free software that is made for Windows. Now, so let's move to the Windows virtual machine and load DeepSkyStacker. So as you can see, the interface is pretty neat. We have three main sessions. We have one main session here where the images will be displayed. We have this bottom part where we see the list of the images that we have loaded in DSS, and then here on the left shoulder of the interface we have all the menu and all the parameters. Now, before we go on, I want to mention something. If you are the good things of DSS is that you do not need to play a lot with the settings. If you are a beginner, 99% of the time the default settings are great, and you do not need to fiddle with stacking settings and things like that. How the fits and the raw files are developed, leave that things alone. If you are a power user, if you know your way into astrophotography, the DSS is powerful enough to let you take control of many aspects. If you are a person that likes to experiment, what I found is that DSS does not have a reset button. So if you messed up something and you don't remember what you changed, it's always difficult to revert back to the beginning, to the default settings. So you may be tempted to disinstall and reinstall DSS. What you could do is, as soon as you load it the first time, you go here in the option, you click save, and you say save as, and you basically you save the settings of the program, so that would be your default settings that you can load every time you need to reset DSS. Because what you do, it's kept in memory. So if I'm going to example stacking, and I said that I want to use a drizzle, enable drizzle 3x, this is something that you will not use all the time. So, but let's suppose that I need to use it, and we will see how to use it. And then I quit my program, and then another image come up, and I want to stack another kind of image. If I go to look in the stacking settings, we see that the drizzle tricks is still enabled. So that's why you need something that can reset your DSS to the standard version. Okay, so what we do? The first things we do is to open the image file. Here I'm already in the light directory of my session on the California Nebula. So I can select all my raw file. I can select all my raw file with Ctrl A. I can open. Now you see all the files are imported here. Those are raw files, and they are marked to be light frames. You can see that's an error that I get with my camera, is not important. So when you click on light, the image is displayed. You can see there are different fields in this part of the interface. We have a quality score that in this case is not known because we didn't analyze the frame yet. We have all the parameters for registering, so the translation and the rotation of the image to align to the reference frame. We have the time and the date we took the image, and we have the size of the image, the depth, the kind of format, this is a raw format, the ISO I was using, the exposure time. Also we could have aperture, the aperture, in this case is 0 because I was using a fully manual lens. So the camera didn't know which kind of aperture I was using. Now here there is, in this part of the interface, there is a very neat feature of DSS. We can click on this group, and we can load other data coming from a different session, or take an image on the same target. So we can stack together different imaging sessions on the same target to increase the total integration time and get a better image quality. By doing that, every group of image will be calibrated with its own calibration files. So we will not see this in this tutorial, but it's something you can use. Now let's go back to our light frame. As you can see, despite the 2-minute the 3-minute exposure, the image is rather dark. Here, on the top right corner of the interface, we have a slider, and this is a kind of visual stretching. So it will stretch the image, and it will, well, you don't know where it is, but I can see here a faint nebulosity. And that's the California Nebula. This was taken at 270 millimeter, so it will not be very large. Now you can see that here there is a very pinkish reddish tone to the image. You may be tempted to go in to change the digital developing process setting for the raw file. You see here the white balance. Here we have use camera white balance. You could say, okay, don't use that, and then you can do apply. Now you see the image is a better tone, and you can see here that you have a bit of nebulosity from the California nebula. Now, one thing I discovered is that if you click no white balance processing, then doesn't matter what you will do. If you are, at least if you are on a stock DSLR, you will not be able to stack the images. DSS will complain and say I can only stack one frame. There is no way to work around that. So my suggestion is leave everything you find here as it is. Don't stay to change the setting here. At least if you don't have a reason, like a modified astro camera, or you are shooting fits and you know what you are doing. But 99% of the time, you can leave things as it is. You could maybe uncheck this use camera white balance, but do not select no white balance processing. So with that you can apply, say okay, now we go back to the image. Okay, so we are back with the image, and now what we want to do is to well, you can work in two ways. One way is to do the registration and the stacking in one go, and that is a great way to do if you have already cleaned up your images and you have manually removed whatever was wrong with certain images. So if you have planes, if you have elongated stars or jumping stars, and you have already removed those images, then you can go on and do everything in one go. Otherwise, you can do the registering of the image in a separate step from stacking. We will do everything in one go. But before doing that, we have to load the calibration file. So we go in the dark, we load the dark frames, we check that we are in the right directory, or we go there, and again we select everything. Now we go with the flats, we are in the right directory, we select everything here, then we go in the dark flats, select everything. Now all these are raw file. Now when it comes to bias, as I said, this is transferable from one session to another, and so when you have the calibration files, at the end of the session, DSS is creating a master file, and for the bias I just use this master bias, and I didn't save all the 60 or something raw files, so I don't have to create a master bias every time. Okay, so now you can see that here in the type column you have the images that are for lights, flats, and darks. So everything is here. The icon also is different depending on the kind of calibration files. You can even look at those files. This is how a flat looks. This is how a dark frame is looking. So let's go back to a light frame, and the next we have to do check all. Now in this way we are going to stack and to align and stack all the images, and we use the entire image. So there is a neat feature, particularly if you are on a star tracker and you photograph with a rather small or short focal length. If you want to get closer to your subject, there is a better way than editing your photo and then, like in Photoshop, crop and resize your images. The better way consists in doing drizzle. Now, if you are not familiar with this technique, you can go in the help of DeepSkyStacker, go to technical info and check the voice drizzle. And you see that is a technique that has been developed by NASA for the Hubble Deep Field Telescope. And so basically it will combine all the images you want to stack in such a way to create a higher resolution image. So this way you can have an example here. This is an image with no drizzle that has been enlarged 4 times, and this is with drizzle enlarged 2 times. So you can see the difference in smoothness and detail of the image as I pass my mouse from one case to the other. Of course, there are some drawbacks, and one of the main is the fact that it requires a lot of memory, and so it's better, particularly in our case, to work on a smaller portion of the image around the target rather than drizzle the entire image. Another thing, if we are shooting for drizzling, then it would be best to have some dithering, if you can, and to slightly undersample your image. So if you are on a stacker, on a tracker, you will naturally meet these two criteria, because you will usually work with a relatively short focal length, and your tracking will be not that accurate anyway, and so probably you have some drift between the exposures, and so this is kind of replacing a bit the dithering. If you are on a Skywatcher Star Adventurer Mini, you can dither directly on the mount, so that would be great for drizzling. So we want to select a portion of the image. To do so, we activate the custom rectangle mode, and we click and drag. And when we do so, we have our rectangle, custom rectangle, that is we are dragging, and we can see the size of this rectangle, and also we see that there are two rectangles with fixed size. One is called 3x and one is called 2x. So if I'm drizzling 2x and my custom rectangle will match the 2x rectangle, so my final image will have the same size of the original one. And if I'm drizzling 3 times and I will match the size of the rectangle 3x, then the final image will have the same size of the original one, the same dimension of the original one. Now, because we will drizzle twice, I choose to match the rectangle 2x, and now we can move it around, and we have a cross indicating the center of this rectangle, and I will place it here where the California Nebula is. I will not go too much close to the edge, because then I have to crop anyway the edges to remove artifact from the alignment due to natural drifting of the mount. So here we are pretty much set. We have make sure that all the files are checked, and then we go to register checked picture. Now here you see there are two tabs. Before discussing what is in the action tab, let's go to the advanced, and we need to be able to set DSS in order to detect a number of stars for the registering that is somewhere in between 200 and 300. That's a good number. If you have too many stars, then it will take too long and will be maybe difficult to create a proper alignment, because there are so many stars, and maybe some hot pixels are detected as stars. And if you have too few stars, then of course it's difficult to find a proper registering. So you can change the detection threshold for the stars by moving this slider here. If you go lower, so if you reduce this threshold, you will increase the number of detected stars. You see now is exploding, is about 2000 stars. If I go if I increase too much the threshold, then I will dramatically reduce the number of detected stars, 0, and so no registering is possible. So try to stay in between 200 and 300, not more than 400 anyway, if you can. And if you cannot, if you cannot arrive at a number of stars that is about 200, 150, then don't hesitate to go as down as 2% of this threshold. So yeah, we increase a little bit more. Okay, so this is fine for me. Now, well, it's a bit higher. You have to remember that these settings are remembered by DSS, so you have to check them all the time. Every time you stack something, we want to check this. You can leave the reduce the noise by using medium filter. You can leave it checked. Now we move to the action tab. Now, if this is the first time you are working on this of these images, then you don't need to register already registered pictures because they have not been registered. If you are tweaking and the setting and observing the change, so you are making different stacks, then you may want register images that have been already registered. Or if you are using groups, now you want to register all the images together, then you click this option. Leave automatic detection of hot pixel as it is. And now, because we said we do all in one go, we click on this stack after registering. Here you have the possibility to select how many of the best images you will stack. So in this case, because I've checked before that I've removed manually all the bad images, I can stack the best 95% of the picture, or the 100% of the best 100% of the picture. Now, these pictures are not. They may not be all the images you have loaded in DSS. If some image is very wrong, and because you didn't remove it manually, then DSS will understand that and will not consider it viable for stacking. So even if you put 100% to stack the best 100%, you may not use all the picture you have loaded into DSS. There are some criteria you cannot escape. Now, the last thing to check here is that you have a green box. This is when you have all your calibration file loaded into DSS. If you don't have calibration files, this will be red and will tell you don't forget to add the darks or flat or whatever is missing. This is just a warning. You can ignore and proceed if you don't have your calibration files. Now, this is the last opportunity to check your stacking parameters. So, for instance, here we said before we want to enable a drizzle but 2x, not 3x. So, good things I checked. So we can remove that. Now, this is accessible also on another panel, and from another menu, that is this settings here in option. And you will also have here a comment mode that is possible to be chosen. Now, you will not really, aside the comment mode and this result tab, you will not really need to change the way the light are combined, the darks are combined, the flats are combined, the bias are combined. One thing you may do if you want to do star trails then is not to align your image. So you will click in the tab alignment, you will click no alignment. That is just something to consider. Otherwise, there is nothing really. As I said, 99% of the time the default settings are okay. So we go to the result, we enable the drizzle tweaks, we click OK. Now everything looks good. We can check the recommended settings. This is a list of settings that DSS is recommended to you depending on the kind of images you are fed to him. So here is telling you, for instance, if you are processing If you are processing a narrowband image, then you may want to use this super pixel mode. If you are using narrowband filters, then you may want to use the per channel background calibration. If you are using a modded DSL camera, you may want to reset all the white balance and things like that. So you can, this is just to check that nothing is really wrong or you haven't forget something with your setting. So now you can go, we can click OK. This is the last reminder of what you can do, of how DSS is set. So basically it's telling us we are using custom rectangle mode and we have drizzle 2x enabled. We are using 4 processor, that is why DSS is rather fast, and we use alignment method that is automatic. Now we have 28 light frame shot at ISO 800 for a total exposure time of 1 hour 24 minutes. This is estimated total time. If you stack less images because you said okay, stack the best 50%, then of course the total exposure time will be half this value. Here are some settings we used. You can see here there is a warning that is related to the fact that I take my flat at a different ISO speed than my frames. There are different schools in there, and I prefer to look at the histogram, and so if I need to do so, I will change the ISO and the exposure. So I don't really care, it's a warning, and I know the flat works well for me, so I can go on. Last things I wanted to tell you is here is the total estimated amount of space the DSS needs in order to complete the tasks. So here is using 2.8 GB on 21 GB that are free on my virtual machine. Just to tell you, if I go back to stack parameters and I say no, enable 3x drizzle, then the needed space is jumped 3 times more. This is, well, not 3 times, but it went from 2.8 to 6.2 GB. So if you drizzle the entire image, you can easily see how you can run out of memory. If you see that this, here you will have a warning that will tell the process cannot be done. So you can go back to stacking and change the temporary file folder. This is the working directory of DSS, and you can go to you can branch an external hard drive with plenty of space and make DSS work there. Of course, if you do this on a USB 2 port, it will be a bit slower, but okay, it's better than not have it running. So let's go back to enable drizzle 2x, our original choice. So this is all set now. We click OK. The program is adding all the dark frames together. We'll create a master dark. Then we'll pass to bias. We'll do the same with the bias, the flat, the dark flat. And then we'll start registering the imaging. And then we'll move to calibrate them with the master dark, with the master calibration file, and then to stack them. So I reckon that the whole process will take about 5 to 6 minutes, and so we'll pause the video and I will see you after the process is completed. Okay, so the stacking is finished. Now is computing the final picture. That will not take, it's an estimation time of 20 something seconds. So this, we are at the end of the process. It took like between 7 and 10 minutes, I'd say. After this, the final image is computed. It will be loaded into DSS for the next steps. Now he's saving this this image in as an autosave in the directory of the light. This autosave is a 32-bit file, and you can use it. You can import in in Photoshop or in Affinity Photo, and then having converted to 16-bit using exposure and gamma mode, and then you work as usual. Now the process DSS doesn't stop there. Now you see it has loaded this image, then you see that it's rather dark, um, and well, this is what stacked image looks like. You see now though that what was before a faint nebulosity and a very small smudge now is running across this part of the image, because this is just the part we have selected before. There are two schools of well, there are two different schools now. There are those that want to edit the image in DSS, and there are those that don't want to edit the image in DSS. Now, I'm pretty much on the second school, and what I prefer to do though is to play with these settings in order to see which kind of image I'm dealing with. So here you can change the position where the histogram of the 3-channel peaks with respect to the luminance curve. Now we can click luminance and we can tweak it, something like so, and we alter the way the curve is looking. You see how it changed shape, so we can go. There are some go-to parameters. I like this 6, 31.6, and then 56.1. Then of course we can move these peaks more on the slope of the curve, so to brighten the image, and we can try to align the channels. Well, sorry, yes, aligning the channels, at least for the position of the peak. You can even increase the saturation. Let's see. Well, let's apply and see what we are going to have it. Now you clearly see that we have here the nebula, the California nebula. We can try to give a bit of some saturation. Then the image is very off as white balance. I was using filters. You can see here in the histogram that the blue is very much broad. So, but at least what I wanted to know was if the nebulosity was there, if the California nebula was there, and this is confirmed. So at this point, what you could do is to save this file directly as a 16-bit TIFF, so we can call it DSS. And instead to apply this adjustment, we can just embed them. So you will see those adjustments applied to the image if you import it back on DSS, but not if you will work the image on an external program. So just use to embed and not to apply, and then save. Now this is saving back my 16-bit image. The last thing you may want to do is to create a star mask. Star mask, it's a mask that will help protecting the stars when you do the histogram stretching in another program. So leave everything as it is here. Just for example, select the name star mask is fine. It's a TIFF file, and so DSS is now computing the number of stars that he needs to take care of, and he will create these star masks. Now we can go to see after it's saved how the star mask looks. So that's the beauty of working with a virtual machine. I'm saving that on the share folder between the Mac and the virtual machine, and so I can just use Finder and go to my shared folder, and here you see that I am having a star mask that I saved before and now will be replaced by this one. And here we have the picture that we just saved, and we can see it in for instance in Photoshop. and see how it looks like in Photoshop. Okay, so as you see, the image is very dark because there were no setting applied to it. What we are going to do now is, for instance, a linear stretching, just to see, to brighten the image. Now we see we are bringing out from the background. This process is also called background extraction. We are bringing out the nebulosity from the background. So we do something like so, and then we can move to curve, and for instance we can try to set a black point for all the different curves. Sorry, for all the different channels, and maybe something like so to remove a bit of this blue. So then you can do a bit more of stretching. And then go to tweak the blue channel. The blue channel as you wish, and then you can continue stretching the histogram and produce an image that will be much better than this one. Something like so. Now you see that there is some light pollution. In Photoshop there is a neat program to remove this kind of gradients. We can just select the image, invert the selection, go to filter and use gradient exterminator. We can balance the background color and we can make it run, and we'll try to even up the image and to balance the colors for the foreground. Now you have a much more natural image, and you can go on to edit as you wish. You can also import this TIFF file in other programs like AstroPixel processors and things like that, even PixInsight. Now this is how the star mask looks. So we have the mask, we have the this follows the convention of masks in Photoshop. Whatever is black is not affected by the layer, by the adjustment in the layer the mask is applied to, and only the white part is affected. So you can import this mask into Photoshop, invert it, and use it as normal mask to protect the stars from bloating up during this histogram stretching. So I think that this covered up pretty much everything about at least the most common use of this DeepSkyStacker, which is a software that I highly recommend you to try. There are alternatives, of course. There is even free. There is Sequator, that is another very nice program, but while it's very easy to be used, it lacks a bit of the fine controls or the possibility that you have in DSS. It doesn't have a comet mode. I don't think you can drizzle, and you don't have all these different algorithms to combine light frame, dark frame, and so on. So I hope you enjoyed this video, and see you next time with another tutorial. Bye.